Thank you very much, choir.
Okay, thank you.
And Richard, thank you for your bravery. Although I should have mentioned before, we have a reading like that, and you finish it, you turn to the congregation and say, anybody who thinks they could have done better. Nobody would have done better. I wouldn't. I just really think it should be alternative pronunciation. The story of Alexis Balaam, potato, potato. The story of Balaam is a curious one, but it holds a lot of good principles for us today. The Israelites, the Hebrew people, are wandering in the wilderness, and they come and camp beside the people of Moab, or the kingdoms of Moab and Midian. And the king of Moab, Balak, looks out one day and he sees the entire plain covered with Israelites. And he said, that's a lot of people. And I know what they did to the Amorites. They defeated the Amorites, so we could be in big trouble. So he came up with this plan. He decided to call the sorcerer Balaam to put a curse on the people of Israel, the Israelites rather, so that he might attack and win. I'm pretty certain that if he does put a curse on them, there's so many of them, just by sheer number, they're going to win. So he called, when he sends his sends an envoy to the sorcerer Balaam, and the princes tell him what the proposition is. And Balaam says, well, you know what? I'm going to go talk to God. Which is a really curious detail of the story. I hope you caught that. Because he doesn't show any allegiance to or awareness of the God of Israel in a personal somehow he's able to communicate with him, and he understands there are limitations that God set. But is he an avid follower and worshiper? We're going to find out no, he's really not. Sort of related to this, though, I remember a radio discussion some years ago, a call-in Christian talk show, where someone asked, does God hear the prayers of non-Christians? Does God hear the prayers of unbelievers? And they went back and forth, the caller and the person on the show, the host, about whether or not God would hear the prayers of the unsaved. And this is one of those passages that leads me to believe that, God does hear the prayers and has a certain communication with the unsaved. God presents His truth. God reaches out to all people everywhere. Psalm 8 talks about God being known just through His creation. That by looking at creation, we should have some understanding of God. And actually, all people everywhere, one thing that defines a people is that they have 2:11 says. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So if someone is earnestly seeking, if someone is coming, God's not going to turn him away. The popular belief, if you will, the common